This hearing of the Senate Judiciary Committee will come to order, and today we consider 5 judicial nominees and 1 Justice Department nominee. I'd like to say in advance we welcome all their family and friends who've joined with them, and we have some competing things on our schedule this morning, including some highly classified briefing that will take place and votes on the floor. So excuse us if we look like we're in a hurry to move from place to place, but that's the nature of our job. The nominees include Judge Jonathan Gray, Eastern District of Michigan; Julia Kobik, District of Massachusetts; Judge Rita Lynn, Northern District of California; Judge Ramon Reyes, Eastern District of New York; Judge James Simmons, Southern District of California; Amy Solomon, Assistant Attorney General for the Office of Justice Programs. Congratulations to all. We have several nominees who will be introduced by our Senate colleagues. I will personally introduce Ms. Solomon. Before I do, I want to comment briefly on our judicial nominees. They represent a continued commitment of the President and Senate Democrats to identify and nominate highly qualified individuals ready to serve on the first day in hearing cases, preside over trials, and promote the administration of justice. 4 of the 5 judicial nominees are sitting judges, 2 on state trial courts, 2 as federal magistrates. All 5 currently litigate or have litigated on behalf of the state and federal government entities. 4 of the 5 have been prosecutors. In short, they have already demonstrated ability and commitment to the rule of law. It is my pleasure to introduce particularly Amy Solomon, nominated to lead the Office of Justice Programs on the Department of Justice. Known as OJP, it is tasked with providing federal leadership and assistance on matters relating to criminal and juvenile justice. Importantly, this includes major financial support through various grant programs to state and local law enforcement, funding the police, as well as funding of victim service programs and other crucial efforts. Under the previous administration, the former president never put forward a nominee for this position, even though the position plays a critical role in protecting America and families in their homes. Ms. Solomon's knowledge of OJP and her work there is second to none. She served as Principal Deputy Assistant Attorney General for this position. And before that, she spent 7 years in this office in career and political roles. In addition to her work at Justice Department, she serves in key research and policy roles at nonprofits and foundations, including the Urban Institute. Throughout her career, she sought to advance evidence-based, common-sense, bipartisan solutions to fighting crime. From literally funding the police to building networks with law enforcement and victims' rights, her priorities and her career have highlighted why she's the right nominee. It's no surprise that she enjoys support across the ideological and political spectrum. I'll put the letters of support in the record without objection, and I'm looking forward to hearing from her. But now I'll turn to our colleagues first to introduce those who are represented by them in the list of nominees. I'm looking at the order. I think Senator Warren, you would be first.
Thank you very much, Chairman Durbin and Ranking Member Grassley. I appreciate...
I'm sorry, I forgot the most important man of the panel.
Why don't you finish and
Senator,
then I'll speak?
Senator Grassley, I, of course, want to wait and hear from you.
Well,
I'm sorry.
okay.
But when Senator Durbin called on me, I tried to respond.
Okay. Well, no problem, no problem. You worry too much about. We got a good relationship. You don't have to worry about me. Anyway, congratulations to the 5 district court nominees. I want to speak just a little bit about how I approach asking questions of these nominees. When we're deciding what cases or articles to ask you about, we're trying to figure out how you'll approach cases as a judge. Every nominee says that they'll follow Supreme Court and Circuit Court precedent, but judges have different views about when cases are binding. So we looked at nominees' records to see how they've handled the issue in the past. We also want to see how nominees will exercise the discretion that they'll have as the district court judges. Important issues decided every day in the courts around this country come down to simply judgment. Sometimes I agree with the decisions I ask about, sometimes I don't, but it's helpful to understand how you as nominees think about them, even if we disagree. hopefully we can have a productive conversation today. Welcome to each of you.
Thank you, Senator Grassley. And now, Senator Warren.
Thank you very much, Tara Durbin, and thank you, Ranking Member Grassley. I appreciate the opportunity to come before you to introduce Ms. Julia Kobik, who is a nominee to the District Court in Massachusetts. Senator Markey and I were proud to recommend her to President Biden for appointment to the federal bench. She is a native of the Commonwealth, and she earned a bachelor's degree from Harvard College before beginning her career as a public school teacher in New York City. While teaching various subjects to second and third grade students, Ms. Kobik earned a master's in elementary education at Pace University. She would go on to continue her education at Harvard Law School, where she served on the Harvard Civil Rights Civil Liberties Law Review. Following law school, Ms. Kobik completed clerkships at every level of the federal judiciary, first as a clerk to Judge Dennis Saylor on the District Court of Massachusetts, then as a clerk to Judge Michael Chagris, who is now Chief Judge of the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, and is here today to support Ms. Kobik's nomination. And finally, Ms. Kobik clerked for the incomparable late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg of the United States Supreme Court. Now, with these impressive credentials, Ms. Kobik could have pursued any number of different legal opportunities. She chose to take her talents to the Massachusetts Attorney General's office and dedicate her career to the people of our great state of Massachusetts. From 2013 to 2021, Ms. Kobik worked as an Assistant Attorney General in the Constitutional and Administrative Law Division. In this role, she worked on important cases involving healthcare access, child welfare, and constitutional issues. In the summer of 2021, Ms. Kobik was elevated to the role of Deputy State Solicitor and has primarily handled civil and criminal appellate litigation. Ms. Kobik is a rare legal talent, and her nomination is widely supported by members of the Massachusetts legal community, her fellow Supreme Court clerks, and even past courtroom adversaries. In fact, in a letter submitted to this committee on behalf of several opposing counsels, they describe her as, quote, first-rate legal abilities and intellect. They go on to say, quote, all of us enjoy working with and against her, even when our party's interests directly clash. I am sure all of us in this body would appreciate having that kind of reputation. Current and former members of the Massachusetts State Judiciary have endorsed Ms. Kobik's nomination, declaring that her, quote, integrity, temperament, and character make her well-suited to be a judge. And every Massachusetts Attorney General, dating back to 1987, has written in support of Ms. Kobik, collectively praising her, quote, tireless dedication, her keen analytical skills, her superb writing skills, and her sound judgment. Ms. Kobik's qualifications and character are beyond reproach, and I am proud to express my support for her nomination to the District Court in Massachusetts. I want to congratulate Ms. Kobik on this achievement. I want to also recognize her husband, Fiery Cushman, who is with us today, her two daughters, Nell and Linnea, who are here with us as well, who will be taking notes on the proceeding, and her parents, Dan and Lori Kobik, and all the rest of her colleagues and friends who came here to support her today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Warren. Our Democratic leader has arrived, and I know his schedule's very hectic. We're going to give him an opportunity to speak this moment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and let me thank you, Senator Grassley, and all the members of this great committee for the opportunity to come before you and introduce a truly standout nominee to the federal bench, Ramon Reyes. Soon you will learn my Mr. Reyes is an outstanding jurist, and I'm confident will join me and President Biden in understanding precisely why he's a uniquely qualified fit for the Eastern District. The first thing to know about Mr. Reyes is he's here with some very important guests, his wife Jane and his 2 law clerks and case manager, Barbara, Alex, and Miriam. Welcome. Thank you for your good work. And if confirmed, Ramon Reyes would be only the 2nd Hispanic man to sit on the Eastern District, an important step to making sure our courts reflect the diversity of this district, one I am proud to say is one of the most diverse districts in the nation, and I live there. And you know why else I'm certain Ramon Reyes will make an excellent judge? Well, he's from Brooklyn. Brooklyn's having a pretty good day today. And what more does one need to know? And dare I say, our track record of high-caliber judges can hold its own against any other place in America. He's also, I am proud to say, even though he's from Brooklyn, as am I, we are Yankee fans, though that team is in the Bronx. But we have stuck with the Yankees. Now, in all seriousness, Judge Reyes's resume is as broad as it is deep. A graduate of a small school in Tompkins County you may have heard of, Cornell, of Brooklyn Law School, and NYU. He began his career clerking for the very same court he now sits on. Beyond his clerkship, Judge Reyes has served as an attorney in private practice, a federal prosecutor in the famed U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York, a lecturer at Brooklyn Law School, and as a U.S. magistrate judge, where he has presided over 33 trials and 15 jury trials. So he's done it all. His experience is broad and deep. And every step of the way, Judge Reyes made sure the law works equally for all Americans, from the most privileged to the most impoverished. He has fought to protect voting rights and accessibility to the ballot box. He has worked to protect workers from discrimination. He has advocated for consumers victimized by healthcare fraud, and throughout his career, he's been a teacher and mentor and advocate for the next generation of Latino lawyers and jurists. In short, our courts need people like Judge Reyes. I have been proud to work with many of you over the last 2 years in advancing nominees who are not only qualified, but also break the pattern of nominees we've grown accustomed to for so long. Together, the Senate has confirmed more people of color, more women, and more nominees from unique backgrounds than under any other administration. And in the years to come, we will continue maintaining a laser focus on bringing balance and impartiality back to our courts. We have more work to do, but I'm proud of the progress we have made. So I want to thank Judge Reyes for being here. I want to congratulate him for his nomination. I want to thank the committee, as always, for indulging me in realizing my schedule and apologize that I have to leave. But thank you for the opportunity. I'm proud to present Judge Reyes.
Thank you very much, Senator Schumer. I believe that Senator Stabenow may be next.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member, and I think we're also pleased to have the opportunity to present our nominees to you today, so thank you so much. I'm honored to be here with Senator Peters to introduce Judge Jonathan J.C. Gray, whom President Biden nominated to serve as the U.S. District Judge for the Eastern District of Michigan. Judge Gray is here today with his wife, Theda Marie, his mother, Renee, his sister, Paulette, and other family and friends. We welcome all of you. We're so glad you're here. Judge Gray is an outstanding choice to serve the people of Michigan because he's frankly been serving the people of Michigan. Judge Gray is currently serving as United States Magistrate Judge for the Eastern District of Michigan. As a magistrate judge, Judge Gray has presided over both civil and criminal cases. Before that, he served as an assistant United States attorney in the Eastern District of Michigan and the Southern District of Ohio, where he prosecuted criminal offenses. I won't ask you who you rooted for in the Ohio State, Michigan game. All right, okay, go blue, right, okay. During the past 10 years, 95% of Judge Gray's practice has been in the federal courts, whether as a magistrate judge or as an assistant U.S. attorney. He also has experience in the private sector, working as an associate at a law firm in Chicago, where he practiced labor and employment law. To add to his impressive legal background, Judge Gray served as a law clerk for the late Judge Damon J. Keith, beloved judge in Michigan, on the United States Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit, where he drafted opinions on both civil and criminal cases. He also clerked for Judge W. Lewis Sands on the United States District Court for the Middle District of Georgia, managing more than 200 civil and criminal cases. Given his experience, it's no surprise that the American Bar Association's Standing Committee on the Federal Judiciary unanimously found him to be well qualified for this position. Judge Gray was born in Mississippi and is a proud graduate of Morehouse College and the Georgetown University Law Center. And in the spirit of those two institutions, Judge Gray is a deep believer in giving back. He's active in the Wolverine Bar Association, the Federal Bar Association, serving on the National Law Clerk Committee. He's an executive board member of the Urban League of Detroit and Southeastern Michigan, and a mentor with the Franklin County Children's Service Simba Mentoring Program. In fact, he was named their Mentor of the Year in 2019. And he has strong ties to his alma mater, serving as an admissions interviewer at Georgetown, remaining active in the Morehouse College Alumni Association's Detroit chapter. Bottom line, Mr. Chairman, I can't think of any better place for Judge Gray to be than to continue serving the people of Michigan on the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Michigan. And I would strongly urge the committee to support him, and I look forward to supporting his nomination on the floor of the Senate. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Stabenow. Senator Markey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much. Ranking Member Grassley, I'm pleased to sit here with Senator Warren to introduce Julia Kobik, our nominee for the United States District Court for the District of Massachusetts. Senator Warren and I work very close as partners on judicial nominations, and once again, it has resulted in an outstanding candidate for the federal court in Boston. Ms. Kobik is joined here today, as Senator Warren said, by several members of her family and friends. They include her husband, Fiery Cushman, her two daughters, her parents, Dan and Laurie Kobik, and Chief Judge Michael Shigiris of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit, for whom Ms. Kobik clerked. Ms. Kobik's in-laws, Linwood Andrews and Jack Cushman, are proudly watching from home. Ms. Kobik has been a rising star in Massachusetts legal circles. Her quick ascension to the federal bench should come as a surprise to no one. She's a Massachusetts native. She graduated from Harvard College and Harvard Law School magna cum laude. She clerked on the Massachusetts Federal Court and then for Judge Shigiris on the Third Circuit. From there, she reached the pinnacle, clerking for the late, great Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the United States Supreme Court. Ms. Kobik then began a legal career devoted entirely to public service. In 2013, she joined the Massachusetts Attorney General's office. Since 2015, that office, the best Attorney General's office in the country, has been headed by our governor-elect, Maura Healey. It is an office dedicated to protecting consumers, fighting fraud and corruption, and safeguarding the environment, workers, and civil rights. There, Ms. Kobik energetically advanced those goals. She began as a trial attorney, and since 2021, she has served as Deputy State Solicitor. And in that position, she has briefed and argued many cases before the Massachusetts appellate courts, cases that involve cutting-edge and complex issues of constitutional law and statutory interpretation. At the same time, true to her roots as a public school teacher before attending law school, Ms. Kobik has mentored public interest-oriented law students at my alma mater, the Boston College Law School, and has served as a mentor with the Appellate Project, an organization that matches attorneys with law students of color interested in appellate advocacy. Current and former members of the Massachusetts State Bench have extolled Ms. Kobik's virtues. They describe her as exceptionally talented, having unquestionable integrity, an impeccable reputation, and the right temperament and intellect, work ethic, and humility to serve as a federal district court judge. Senator Warren and I couldn't agree more. We look forward to Ms. Kobik's hearing today, a speedy confirmation, and the start of what undoubtedly will be a long and distinguished career on the federal court. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Markey. Senator Peters.
Well, thank you, Chairman Durbin and Ranking Member Grassley for holding this hearing. I'm pleased to introduce, along with my colleague and friend Senator Stabenow, exemplary Michigander and nominee for the federal bench, Judge Jonathan Gray, to serve on the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Michigan. I also want to take a moment as well to acknowledge Judge Gray's family here today, his wife, Theda Marie, his sister, Paulette, and his mother, Renee. It's great to see you. Welcome to Washington to be here for a big day for the family. Judge Gray has served for the last year and a half as magistrate judge for the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Michigan. Before being appointed a magistrate judge, he worked for nearly a decade as an assistant United States attorney. Judge Gray is a graduate of Morehouse College and Georgetown University Law Center and has completed clerkships at the federal district and circuit levels. Throughout his career, Judge Gray has earned praise for his work. A federal judge before whom Gray has often appeared described him as well-prepared, poised, seemingly unflappable, and unusually gifted, even among very gifted peers. One colleague pointed to Judge Gray's intellect and strong work ethic, and another attorney described him as having, quote, the ability to deal with people from all walks of life, and said that he approaches every case with diligence and a desire for fairness. Beyond the praise he has received, the broad range of Judge Gray's prosecutorial work during his decade as an assistant U.S. attorney is notable. Judge Gray successfully prosecuted matters involving serial domestic abuse, arson, illegal firearm possession, international narcotics trafficking, and domestic bank fraud, among other wide-ranging work. Judge Gray also led a 4-year investigation that uncovered a scheme of fraudulent opioid prescription leading to guilty pleas from 10 defendants. Judge Gray's work on behalf of the broader public, particularly young people and aspiring attorneys, is also quite remarkable. For example, Judge Gray has worked to create an in-school mentoring program for boys in the city of Detroit. He also has devoted extra time to assist students with test and bar exam prep, especially for first-generation college students from disadvantaged backgrounds. Without question, Judge Gray is accomplished and has critical attributes for federal judges. He is committed to upholding the rule of law, has strong interpersonal skills, and treats everyone with both dignity and respect. I'm confident that Judge Gray will be confirmed by the Senate and honorably represent the people of Michigan and our country on the federal bench, and urge this committee's support of his nomination. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Peters. We have 2 nominees before us today from the state of California, and I'd like to recognize Senator Feinstein initially. Senator?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm very pleased this committee is considering 2 nominees to serve on federal districts in California. Judge Rita Lynn has been nominated to serve on the Northern District, and Judge James Simmons has been nominated to serve on the Southern District. These nominees are both experienced judges. They will make excellent additions to the federal bench. Judge Lynn grew up in the Bay Area. She received her bachelor's degree from Harvard College and her law degree magna cum laude from Harvard Law School, where she was an editor on the Harvard Law Review. After law school, Judge Lynn served as a law clerk on the United States Court of Appeals for the First Circuit. She then moved back to San Francisco to join the law firm Morrison and Foerster, where she eventually became a partner. Judge Lynn specialized in complex civil litigation. She handled cases ranging from patents and copyrights and trade secrets to nationwide class action lawsuits. She also maintained an active pro bono practice. She really was well specialized in and diverse as well. In 2014, she joined the United States Attorney's Office for the Northern District of California. She prosecuted a wide range of significant criminal cases in federal court involving public corruption, organized crime, child pornography, and drug trafficking. In 2018, Judge Lynn was appointed to serve as a state court judge on the San Francisco Superior Court, where she currently presides over criminal cases. Judge Lynn is an experienced jurist with a deep respect for the law, and I really believe she's going to be an asset to the Northern District bench. I'm also pleased the committee is considering Judge James Simmons today in the Southern District. Judge Simmons grew up in Inglewood, California. He earned his bachelor's degree from the University of California at Berkeley and his law degree from Golden Gate University School of Law. After law school, Judge Simmons became a deputy city attorney for the San Diego City Attorney's Office. He then joined the district attorney's office as a deputy DA. In 12 years as a prosecutor, he handled a wide range of challenging criminal prosecutions, including homicides, gang shootings, robberies, and sexual assault cases. 8 of those years were spent in the gang prosecution unit, where he prosecuted the first criminal gang conspiracy charge in California. In 2017, Judge Simmons was appointed to the San Diego Superior Court, where he currently serves as a supervising judge for the North County branch of the court. In his time on the bench, Judge Simmons has demonstrated his commitment to impartiality and to showing respect to those appearing before him. So, Judge Lynn and Simmons are both highly qualified candidates. If confirmed, they will continue to demonstrate, I believe, their character and commitment to equal justice under the law. I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this today, and I look forward to these 2 qualified nominees. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Feinstein. I now have the privilege of also offering introductory remarks for our 2 nominees from California, and will apologize for a little bit of the repetition, but it's just an indicator of how proud and enthusiastic both Senator Feinstein and I are of Judge Lynn and Judge Simmons. I also want to thank Ranking Member Grassley for the indulgence here. It's an honor to introduce what I believe are 2 exceptional nominees to serve on the federal district courts in California, beginning with Judge Rita Lynn. Judge Lynn is a nominee to serve on the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of California. She earned her undergraduate degree from Harvard College and her law degree from Harvard Law School. After clerking on the First Circuit Court of Appeals for Judge Sandra Lynch, she started her legal career as an associate at the law firm of Morrison Foerster in San Francisco, eventually being promoted to partner. But in 2014, she chose to leave private practice to pursue a career in public service, joining the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Northern District of California. In 2018, after 4 years, Judge Lynn was appointed to the San Francisco Superior Court, where she now presides over felony and misdemeanor trials. So as you can see, between her experience as a prosecutor and her decade as a civil litigator, Judge Lynn has experience with both civil and criminal litigation. And at every step of her career, she's been guided by her dedication to public service, whether by maintaining an extensive pro bono practice in the early years of her career, or by leaving behind the promise of a lucrative career in private practice in favor of pursuing public service. Judge Lynn has proven that she has the heart and the mind worthy of serving as a federal district judge. And as someone who has lived her entire life with a hearing disability, she also brings with her a unique perspective from a community that is not often represented in our nation's federal judiciary. So we are fortunate not only to have a nominee with the judicial qualifications of Judge Lynn, but someone with the voice, the personal experience, and the passion for public service that she brings to the table. And I'm so proud to support her nomination. Today, I'm also privileged to introduce Judge James Simmons, Jr., President Biden's nominee to serve on the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of California. As you heard, he was born in Inglewood, California. Judge Simmons was raised by a single mother in the proud working class and multiracial community of South Los Angeles, a community that has also faced significant challenges due to decades of underinvestment. Through Judge Simmons' hard work, sacrifice, and an unwavering desire to succeed, he became the first person in his family to graduate from college, and he pursued a life in public service. He earned his undergraduate degree from UC Berkeley and his JD from the Golden Gate University School of Law. Soon after, he became a deputy city attorney in San Diego, followed by serving as a deputy district attorney in San Diego County for over a decade. In 2017, he was appointed to the Superior Court of San Diego County, where he serves today. Now, I'll make a brief personal note because we've talked a lot in this committee about further diversifying the federal judiciary through different career trajectories and different perspectives that people ought to bring to the bench. I know I've spoken repeatedly about the disproportionate representation of prosecutors as opposed to defenders in all levels of the federal judiciary. So it may raise some eyebrows from folks looking at my record of why I speak so highly of a prosecutor being nominated in Judge Simmons. And so I asked Judge Simmons at an earlier opportunity why he wanted to become a prosecutor in the first place. And he told me pretty straightforward and compellingly that it's because that's where he could do the most good. And because he felt it was important for people like him to bring their experiences and backgrounds to that role with an understanding for defendants with backgrounds similar to his own. And I'm proud that today Judge Simmons is prepared to bring his good work and life experience to the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of California. I know California will be a stronger, more just place because of his perspective. And I thank Chairman Durbin, Ranking Member Grassley, for embracing the talk of diversity in the federal judiciary in the proceedings of this committee. Both Judge Lynn and Judge Simmons are shining examples of the variety of perspectives that we have been looking for. And to be sure, both have had what many would consider traditional career paths to the federal bench, but their nominations represent our commitment to true diversity in all its forms. Diversity not just in paths to service, but in background, perspective, and lived experience. Their voices matter, and the communities and backgrounds that they represent matter too. And I'm thankful for both Judge Lynn and Judge Simmons for their service and to their families for allowing them to serve our nation. I urge my colleagues to advance their nominations. And with that, let me now ask all the nominees to please stand and come forward today to be, as I administer the oath. Please raise your right hand. Do you affirm that the testimony you are about to give before this committee is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. You may be seated, and please let the record reflect that all nominees have answered in the affirmative. Colleagues will now proceed to opening statements by each of the nominees. I'll let you catch your breath here, and we will begin with Judge Gray. Please proceed.
Good morning, and thank you, Senator Padilla, for presiding over this hearing. Good morning, Ranking Member Grassley, and to all members of this committee. It is an honor to appear before you. I greatly appreciate President Biden for nominating me to serve as a United States District Court judge. I also want to acknowledge the warm and kind support and thoughtful words from my home state senators, Senator Stabenow and Senator Peters. Thank you also to the members of their Judicial Selection Committee. I want to acknowledge 3 judges, 2 of whom have played pivotal roles in my life. I had the great privilege of clerking for the late, great Judge Damon J. Keith on the 6th Circuit, and he taught me so many life lessons that I reflect upon every day, and he remains a member of my family. I also had the great privilege of clerking for Judge W. Lewis Sands, and his humility and grace are also items that I treasure with me and take into account when I'm going about judicial decision-making. I want to acknowledge Judge Denise Page Hood and her 28 years of service as an active judge and her decision to take senior status, which created this vacancy for which I have been nominated. I want to acknowledge many of my family members. I have a large and supportive network, very close family members, many friends and colleagues who are not with me in spirit, who are with me in spirit, but are not with me physically. I also want to acknowledge my grandmothers who have passed away, and 2 aunts, one in the last year and one last week. Their life lessons, their wit, and their grace are also principles that live greatly in my heart. I have 5 siblings, 3 older siblings, 3 younger siblings. I can't name all of them, but I appreciate all of them, and I know they are working. I can't name them, but I won't do it for time purposes today. But I know that they are watching when they're able to take breaks at work. I appreciate them. I appreciate my parents, my father, my mother, my stepfather. My mother is here with me today. Mom, I thank you so much for your hard work and your guiding principles of hope, faith, and determination that no matter our circumstances, we could achieve anything. I thank you for raising me and my 3 older siblings on your own and doing whatever it took to make our dreams a reality. I also want to acknowledge my sister Paulette, who is in the room with me. She's a public servant in her own right. She's a physician in Baton Rouge. I appreciate her for making the journey. Most importantly, my wonderful and incredible wife, Theta. Thank you so much for your love and joy. It is an honor to walk with you, alongside you each day. Thank you also for your service in teaching young minds. I want to conclude by thanking the communities of possibility that have nurtured me and supported me along this path. Those are the cities of Baton Rouge, where I grew up, the city of Detroit, where I've grown so much in adult life, and also the city of Chicago and Columbus, Ohio. Senators, I look forward to answering your questions today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Kobik.
Thank you, Senator Padilla, Ranking Member Grassley, and all the members of the committee. It's a privilege to be here with you today, and I thank you for considering my nomination and welcoming me and my fellow nominees.
Can you pull the microphone just a tad bit closer to you?
I'm grateful to President Biden for the tremendous honor of this nomination. I also want to thank the members of the Advisory Committee on Judicial Nominations who first recommended me for this role, and thank Senator Warren and Senator Markey for recommending me to the President, for their very warm introductions this morning, and for putting their faith in me. I am delighted to introduce you to my family members who are here today. First, my husband and best friend, Fiery Cushman. He's the best chef a family could hope for, and he's also brilliant, humble, and keeps me grounded. I would not be here today without his steadfast love and support. My 2 incredible daughters, ages 7 and as of yesterday, 6, are here as well. They are kind and generous and curious girls, and I'm proud of them every single day. My parents, Dan and Lori Kobik, are here. They've always believed in me. They've made sacrifices for my education, and they've taught me the importance of public service. I'm grateful also to the many family members and friends who are supporting me online, including my in-laws, Jack Cushman and Linwood Andrews, my brother Brian, my brothers and sisters-in-law, Holloway, O'Neill, and Marie. I also want to thank the 3 legal giants who gave me my start in the law: Chief Judge Dennis Saylor, Chief Judge Michael Shigaris, who's here with me today, and the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. They gave me the very best examples of diligent and wise judging, and their guidance and friendship have been such a tremendous blessing in my life. I also want to acknowledge my professional family. It has been my great privilege to work with all of the public servants at the Attorney General's office this past decade. Their dedication to the people of Massachusetts inspires me day in and day out. And I've had the great fortune to grow as a lawyer in the legal community in Massachusetts. There are so many people who have helped me get to this point today: professors, mentors, judges, government officials, opposing counsel, co-counsel, and I've learned so much from each of them and value their commitment to our joint project of justice. Thank you again, Senators, for having me here today, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you. Judge Lynn.
Senator Padilla, Ranking Member Grassley, members of the committee, thank you for taking the time to consider my nomination. I am grateful to President Biden for the honor of this nomination and for giving me the chance to serve my country again. I thank Senators Feinstein and Padilla for their support and warm introductions. I would not be here but for the courage and hard work of my parents, who immigrated from Taiwan in the 1960s. Like so many others, they came here to pursue the American dream and the freedom and opportunity that our country offers. They met and fell in love here in the nation's capital in Washington, D.C., before moving to California, where I was born. I am forever grateful for all the ways in which they sacrificed to give me a better life. My mom could not be here today in person for health reasons, but I know she is watching remotely. My dad passed earlier this year, but I know he is watching from above and that he is here in my heart. I'm joined by my husband, Chase, today. Ever since we met at the vending machine in our college dorm, he has been my best friend and biggest cheerleader. We have with us our 2 boys, who are 10 and 13. They keep me grounded, sane, and up to date on the latest YouTube videos. I also want to introduce Chase's parents, Marcia and Ty, who are like a second set of parents to me, and my good friends Patricia, George, and Andy, who have sustained me through more than 2 decades of friendship. Finally, thank you to everyone supporting me remotely: my San Francisco Superior Court family, my friends from the United States Attorney's Office and Morrison & Foerster, my church community, the ladies of my running group, and all of my friends and family. I look forward to answering the committee's questions.
Thank you. Judge Reyes.
Thank you, Senator Padilla, Ranking Member Grassley, and the members of the committee. It's indeed an honor for me to be here today. I'd like to thank Senator Schumer for his kind introduction and for recommending me to President Biden for nomination, Senator Gillibrand for her support of my nomination, and of course, President Biden for my nomination to be a United States District Judge for the Eastern District of New York. Senators, I've been a public servant for nearly all of my professional career, the last 16 of which I have served as United States Magistrate Judge. I would welcome, with the utmost humility and honor, the opportunity to continue to serve our district, our country, as a United States District Judge. I'd like to thank the people with whom I've worked over the years, the faculty and administration of Brooklyn Law School, the late Honorable David G. Traeger, for whom I clerked in the Eastern District, the people at O'Melveny and Myers, where I began my career as a young lawyer, my former colleagues in the United States Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, where I learned what it means to be a public servant, and of course, my magistrate judge and district judge colleagues in the Eastern District of New York, from whom I've learned so much over the past 16 years. I'd be remiss, Senators, if I didn't mention my extended family, in-laws, and friends who are watching across the country. I especially want to acknowledge my older sister, Kara, who is watching from upstate New York, as well as my parents, my wife's parents, and my older sisters, all of whom are no longer with us. They've all blessed me with love and care and support over the years, and I thank them for doing so. Physically present with us today are my law clerks, Barbara Rodriguez and Alex Mendelson, my courtroom deputy case manager, Miriam Vertis. I want to thank Barbara, Alex, and Miriam, and all of my former clerks for their service to our court. Finally, I want to thank our sons, Ramon III and Henry, and my wife, Jane. Ramon and Henry are not here today, both having pressing work and educational commitments. Ramon and Henry are our inspiration and our joy. And to my wife, Jane, herself a career public servant, I can only say thank you and I love you. Jane and I are best friends and one another's champions. For her part, Jane has enabled me to become what I am today, and for that and everything else she has done for our family, I will be eternally grateful. Again, Senators, it's an honor for me to be here today, and I thank you for the opportunity to be considered for nomination, and I welcome your questions.
Thank you very much. Judge Simmons.
Thank you very much, and good morning, Senator Padilla. I want to thank you, Ranking Member Grassley, and the other members of this committee. I would like to thank President Biden for his nomination. I would like to thank President I would like to thank President Biden for this nomination. I would like to thank both my home state senators, Senator Padilla and Feinstein, for not just their warm introductions, but also for their support in recommending me to the president. I am truly blessed and honored by your support and confidence in me. Of course, I would not be here today without the love and support of my best friend, my wife, Markeisha. I met her 25 years ago, and during that 25 years, she has encouraged me, she has loved me, supported me, pushed me, and inspired me. I cannot imagine what my life would be like without her in it. She blessed me with our two sons, who are both here today. They are 11 and 13. My oldest son missed his flag football championship game yesterday, so he was not happy to miss that game. They are missing school today, and he's not happy to be missing his advanced math and science classes, but I am so thankful that they are here to observe this proceeding. My sons are my greatest joy, and I love my family immensely. With me in spirit today is my mother and my oldest sister. They are no longer with us. My mother taught us so many life lessons, so many lessons that brought me before this panel today. My two living sisters were unable to be here today, but they are watching remotely today. Growing up, we didn't have much, but we always had each other, and we had love, support, and faith. I want to thank them for their support. I also like to thank my in-laws, the Wyatt family. All of my wife's family have showed me continuous love and support for the last 25 years. They have become my parents, my grandparents, my aunts. I sincerely thank them for the impact they've had on my life. Finally, I would like to thank my San Diego Superior Court family for their encouragement and support. I know I have many members watching today, especially my North County family, excuse me, and my justice partners from North County. I know many of you, as I said, are watching today. I appreciate all your support. Senators, I welcome your questions today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Finally, Ms. Solomon.
Thank you, Senator Padilla and distinguished members of the committee. I'm honored to be here today as President Biden's nominee to serve as Assistant Attorney General for the Office of Justice Programs. And I want to thank Senator Durbin for the generous introduction. I also want to thank my family for their love and support, always and certainly throughout this process. I'm joined today by my wonderful husband, Michael, and my awesome 13-year-old daughter, Eva. My sons, Gabe and Josh, couldn't miss their college classes at the universities of Wisconsin and Michigan, but I know they are cheering me on. My parents, Janet and David Lefkowitz, are watching from North Carolina. I am beyond grateful for their unconditional love and support. My mom is my biggest cheerleader. She tries to keep up with every development in the field, and I am so relieved that she did not submit a letter to the committee or bake brownies for everyone. I also want to recognize my brother David, my father-in-law Stuart and his partner Lisa, my late mother-in-law Judy, my sisters and brother-in-law, nieces, nephews, aunts, uncles, and cousins. I am so fortunate to have the love and support of a close family. I also want to acknowledge my beloved work family. I've been working on criminal justice issues for more than 30 years now, and I'm so lucky to have had amazing mentors over the years, including Frank Hartman, Jeremy Travis, Lori Robinson, and Carol Mason, the latter two of whom were actually Assistant Attorneys General for OJP. These four individuals taught me through their example to aim high, to keep eyes on the prize, to follow the data, and to always do what is right. The career team at OJP is an important part of my work family too, and I have such admiration for my colleagues at the Department of Justice. I've worked at OJP 3 times now over the last 25 years in both career and appointed positions. The first time was in the 1990s at the National Institute of Justice. I was a very junior staffer. I was sitting in a windowless cube, and I loved every minute of it. In those early days, I learned that government could be creative and rigorous and dogged about finding solutions to help keep our communities safe, as we then tackled historically high rates of violent crime and pioneered some of the earliest national reentry issues. My second stint was during the Obama administration, when I served as Director of Policy and Executive Director of the Federal Interagency Reentry Council, a cabinet-level body that focused on bipartisan and common-sense ways to improve the odds of successful reentry. And then in May 2021, I was called back to the department as a Principal Deputy Assistant Attorney General, where I've been so fortunate to work with an outstanding team of service professionals. Despite my protests, several of the appointed leaders of OJP are here with me today, and they are a truly remarkable, dedicated, and expert set of leaders, and I am so honored to work with them. In addition to my time at DOJ, I've spent 17 years working in nonprofit, think tank, and philanthropy settings, as well as a year as a VISTA volunteer at the Vermont Department of Corrections, which set me down this path in the first place. Over the years, I've worked on corrections reform and policing, prisoner reentry, juvenile justice, and efforts to reduce violent crime. I've worked with law enforcement and corrections officials, victims advocates, the research community, and people with lived experience. I've always worked with stakeholders from both sides of the aisle, and more often than not, we found common ground and shared goals as we all seek a country with safe neighborhoods and where our children can lead full and joyful lives. The through line here is an honest, earnest commitment to bipartisan and evidence-based solutions and a focus on moving the dial on outcomes that really matter to people. Since I've been back at OJP, I've focused on being a good steward of the federal dollars, raising morale and bolstering the dedicated career staff, leveraging our resources to help jurisdictions keep their communities safe, and investing in research and data to inform policy and practice. I set a high bar and have very high expectations of the team and of myself. I try to bring out the best in people, but also to hold us all to account. I see the potential in OJP to serve as a think tank for the department and an engine of innovation for the field, and always with the North Star of safe and just communities. I thank you for considering my nomination and welcome your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Solomon. Thank you to all of our nominees. We will now turn to questions from the committee. Senators will have 5 minutes to ask questions of these nominees, and I will begin. First question is for Judge Lynn. Now, if confirmed, you would be the only one of a few candidates nominated to a federal judgeship who is open about living with a disability. I'd love it if you could spend a moment talking to the committee about your hearing disability, how it's affected you professionally, and in particular, how it has shaped you in your role as a judge.
Thank you for the question, Senator Padilla. I lost most of my hearing when I had a childhood illness as a toddler. I'm almost completely deaf in my right ear. I am hearing impaired in my left ear. I have worn hearing aids in both ears since I was 5 years old. Today, thankfully, through the miracle of modern technology, my hearing is rarely an issue for me, particularly in a quiet environment like a courtroom. But for most of my childhood and into my young adulthood, it was an obstacle for me. And looking back, I can also see how formative it was. I learned to listen closely. I have to listen to every word of necessity. And as a child, I also had to recognize that no matter how hard I studied or how good I was at school, it was always possible that I literally missed something because I didn't hear it. And I think both of those mental habits, listening closely and recognizing the possibility that I might be missing critical information, those mental habits have served me well throughout my professional career as a civil litigator, as a federal prosecutor, and most of all now as a Superior Court judge. And I hope that they will serve me well on the federal bench as well, if I am so fortunate as to be confirmed. My hearing was an obstacle for me, but looking back now, I am grateful for the journey it took me on and the lessons it taught me.
Thank you. Next question for Judge Simmons. And I kind of teased this in my introduction of you. Before your nomination to the San Diego County Superior Court, you served as a prosecutor where you thought you'd be able to do the most good. So can you share a little bit more about your background in public service and how serving as an advocate in the courtroom has prepared you to serve on the federal bench?
Thank you very much for the question, Senator Padilla. As you stated, I started as a deputy city attorney for 1 year as a local city prosecutor, and then I worked for the San Diego District Attorney's Office for the 12 years. For 8.5 of those years, I was a gang prosecutor, meaning I prosecuted individuals who were accused to be gang members who committed violent crimes. That was an experience that I enjoyed because I felt like I was able to help communities similar to the one I grew up in, that were plagued by a small set of individuals that were committing a large portion of crimes. I learned to work with individuals from the community. I routinely met with those who were victims of crimes in their own communities, in their own homes. It made sure I expressed to them that they were entitled to justice like everyone else was. So that was an important experience for me, making sure that I did justice properly with the highest ethics and making sure that I protected communities similar to the communities I grew up in. That prepared me for a role in the San Diego Superior Court bench because I was able to get along with all sides. I developed a great reputation as a deputy DA. I have continued that reputation as a Superior Court judge. I've been a judge for 5 years, but I am now the supervising judge for the North County branch of the San Diego Court. I am the most junior supervising judge for the entire county, and I did that because of the respect and my work ethic that I have shown.
Thank you very much. And final question for Judge Lynn. Again, you bring a tremendous amount of both private experience and public experience to the job. How has your time serving as judge in your current capacity formed your approach to service, particularly as you hope to move to the federal bench?
Thank you, Senator Padilla. I am currently a San Francisco Superior Court judge. I have been a judge for 4 years now. In my first 2 years, I handled a busy felony criminal calendar, 200 to 250 matters a week. I am now in a criminal trials assignment where I've handled a whole range of trials from murders to rape to child sex abuse. But in each case, in the end, my approach is the same. I diligently listen to the arguments of the parties and review the submissions. I review the factual record and the applicable law. I listen with an open mind to the evidence presented to me, and I render a ruling that is fair and impartial based on the law and the facts. It is a priority for me in my courtroom to set a tone for everyone in my courtroom to feel welcome and invited to address the court and to feel seen, heard, and respected at every stage of the process. Those are all skills that I hope to take with me to the federal bench if I am confirmed.
Thank you very much. We both welcome back. And I now turn to Senator Grassley for questions.
Step out a minute to do a live radio program. I'm going to start with Ms. Kobach. I want to ask you about your work on cases involving Second Amendment, specifically about the Catano case. The Supreme Court held in Heller, as you know, that the Second Amendment protects the right to own arms that were, quote, not in existence at the time of the founding. It rejected a claim to the contrary as boarding, quote unquote, boarding on the frivolous. But in a few years later, Catano, you argued that stun guns were too modern so that they were protected. So I'd like to have you explain your thought in regard to that, whether it was consistent with Heller, and at the same time, could you explain why the briefing didn't address the Supreme Court statement that the Second Amendment protected arms that, quote, not in existence at the time of the founding?
Thank you for the question, Ranking Member Grassley. In my capacity as Assistant Attorney General, I was assigned to write or co-author the brief in opposition to certiorari in the Catano case. The initial decision to bring charges was made by the district attorney, and the district attorney handled the case at the trial court level and on appeal in the Supreme Judicial Court. So our role, the Attorney General's office took over representation of the case when the case reached the Supreme Court. And our argument in the brief was simply that the Supreme Court should deny the petition for a writ of certiorari. I certainly understand the Supreme Court summarily reversed the SJC's decision in that case, stating that the SJC's decision was inconsistent with Heller in 3 respects. And I want to affirm, Senator, that in every case I've handled involving the Second Amendment, my arguments have been based on Heller and McDonald, and I would adhere to all of the Supreme Court's precedent on the Second Amendment, including its recent decision in Bruin, if I were so fortunate as to be confirmed.
Okay, thank you. Now, Mr. Reyes, I want to ask about a recent order reversing bail package that you had approved. In Sternquist, the defendant was charged with possessing fraudulent badges and credentials for federal agencies. The government claimed the defendant had more than 50 fraudulent law enforcement badges. The district court judge says that the defendant had, quote, substantial criminal history, including felony convictions for identity theft, carrying a concealed weapon, grand larceny, possession of stolen property, and possession of tools for forgery, counterfeiting, end of quote. The defendant also had a history of not complying with court orders. When her release was searched, the government found numerous firearms, including two fully automatic rifles. I understand that there had been errors in the defendant's medical care, but the district court judge made a compelling case for flight risk and community danger. So I'd like to have you explain your thinking on granting bail in that case.
Thank you, Ranking Member Grassley. I've handled over 850 bail applications in my 16 years as a magistrate judge, and in each instance, I follow the Bail Reform Act, which Congress enacted and set forth the standards to apply, including ensuring the safety of the community, guarding against risk of flight, as well as other factors. In Ms. Sternquist's case, she presented with significant health issues, including being in a wheelchair, not having any mobility, other significant health issues that I don't want to mention on the record, but that were caused by the treatment that she received at the Metropolitan Detention Center. And the bail package that I approved had significant conditions on it that prevented or would have prevented the danger to the community and any risk of flight, including a third-party custodian, home detention with electronic monitoring, no access to the internet to continue any alleged criminal activity. So in every bail determination I make, I look at the case individually, and where the circumstances are warranted, I grant bail with the appropriate terms and conditions that protect the community and ensure that the defendant will not flee.
Yeah, my time's out, so Mr. Simpson, I'm going to have to submit my question to you for answer in writing. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Feinstein.
As I sit here and listen, and there are many, many hearings, what interests me is what experience in your life has shaped you the most to be able to contribute to the job that you are here to hopefully receive. So could we begin here and go right down the line? I want to hear the personal story quickly from each of you as to what has been most important to you.
Thank you, Senator Feinstein. I've been shaped by experiences growing up in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, in diverse communities of different means. I've been shaped by differing accesses to education. I have been shaped by encountering individuals of different cultures, and those experiences I carry with me as a sitting federal magistrate judge to keep an open mind, to not prejudge any case before me, and to decide each case fairly and impartially.
Thank you. Good answer.
Thank you, Senator. I'll share
Could you raise your mic a little?
Sure. The first experience I'd share is my incredible good fortune to begin my legal career clerking for 3 outstanding judges. As I mentioned, Judge Saylor, Judge Shigaris, and Justice Ginsburg. And it was just such a tremendous honor to watch them do the work of judging every day, applying the law fairly and impartially to all of the parties that came before them. I'd also say the past decade of working with the public servants in the Massachusetts Attorney General's office has made a tremendous impression on me. I've learned a lot from them and from all of the litigants that we were fortunate to work with and would take their commitment to public service with me if I were fortunate to serve my country in a new capacity as a judge.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Senator. I've been shaped by many of my career experiences, but the career experience that probably has had one of the most profound impacts on me was my time as a federal prosecutor. When I was a federal prosecutor, I saw it as my job both to uphold the law, but also to preserve the integrity of the criminal justice process. When I was investigating cases, I took the investigation where the facts and the evidence led. When I was charging cases, I did so based on the facts and the law. And when I was prosecuting and trying cases in federal court, I felt it was my obligation not only to advance the interests of the United States, but to do so in a way that respected the rights of the defendant and also the statutory rights that Congress has given to crime victims.
Thank you.
And that experience has served me well on the state court bench, and I hope that it will serve me well on the federal bench as well, if I'm confirmed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Feinstein. I think my career path was shaped very early on. I come from a family of public servants. My mother was a New York City school teacher. My father was a correction officer. I have 2 uncles who were detectives in the New York City Police Department. My grandfather worked in the sanitation department, as did my other uncle. And I have a family that served extensively in the armed forces. So that, I think, really was what drove me. And then when I clerked for Judge Traeger, seeing what he did, watching the assistant U.S. attorneys, both on the criminal side and the civil side, I realized that that's what I wanted to do. So that's what formed me, partly what got me here.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Senator Feinstein.
Lift your mic a little so we can hear.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Senator Feinstein. The most important experience for me was being raised by my mother. I was raised by a single mother. She was a cafeteria worker. She had a high school degree, a high school diploma. She did not have a college education. But she instilled core qualities in my sisters and I. She instilled the qualities of hard work, of respecting others, of having strong ethics, and of knowing that you never give up on your dreams. Those are things that inspired me to succeed in my professional career. All of those factors have helped me on the Superior Court bench, and if I am so fortunate enough to be confirmed to the District Court, they will help me serve in that position as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Feinstein. I would point to an early professional opportunity working at the Office of Justice Programs in the 1990s. We faced two very large challenges of violent crime rates being very, very high and hundreds of thousands of people coming out of prison without a plan about how to address that safely. So I got to work with senior leaders in the department, with stakeholders, researchers, prosecutors, law enforcement, all to think about how we could be creative about solutions to those very challenging
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you all for your responses. As I recognize Senator Kennedy next for questions, let me also announce that I will be excusing myself to attend another committee, and will be turning the chairmanship over to Senator Hirono. Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have been given 50 seconds to ask each of you questions and to hear your answers, which of course is patently absurd. So I'd ask if you would just answer my question directly. This isn't a question, Judge Gray, I may vote for you anyway, but I'll commit right now in front of God and country to vote for you if you'll move back to Louisiana. Judge Lynn, I've read a number of your writings. I want to, you wrote an article in December of 1998 entitled Person of Faith, Race and Religion as Experiential Knowledge. You wrote it in a journal called Perspective. And this is what you said, I quote, your words, not mine. The problem with the Christian coalition is not that they are Bible thumpers, parentheses, there are personal beliefs that often result from religious experiences, close parentheses, but that they are bigots, end of quote. Did I quote that correctly?
I believe you did.
Did you write that?
I did write that when I was 18 years old, or 20 years old, excuse me. I do want to be clear. I do not agree with that today. I wrote that before I went to law school, before I had any kind of
You were a grown woman when you wrote this.
I'm sorry?
You were a grown woman when you wrote this.
I was 20 years old when I wrote it. It was before I had a professional career.
You were in your third year at Harvard?
I was
a senior at Harvard.
I was a junior at Harvard.
Junior. So you were 3/4 of the way through your Harvard education, and you wrote that.
That is correct, Senator. It is
Wow.
20 years before I became a judge. I do not agree with it today. I do want to be clear about that.
Okay. Judge Simmons, let me just ask you a couple questions. You finished law school in 2004?
Yes, sir.
All right. Have you ever tried a case in federal court?
I have not, Senator.
Have you ever filed a brief in federal court?
I have not practiced in federal court. My entire practice has been in the state court.
Okay. Have you ever argued a motion in federal court?
I have my entire practice of over 12 years as a prosecutor has been in state court, Senator.
Okay. Have you ever, you serve as a state court judge, have you ever presided over a jury trial as a state court judge?
In the 5 years that I've been on the Superior Court bench, I have been in a moving department, and now I'm the supervising judge.
Have you ever tried a jury trial?
As an attorney, I have tried.
No, as a judge.
As a judge, I have presided over court trials, not jury trials, sir.
No, so the answer is no.
I have not presided over jury trials as a judge.
Have you, in the 5 years you've been on the state bench, have you ever written any opinions, issued any opinions?
Well, sir, I've been in moving departments in the 5 years that I've been as a Superior Court judge. We don't issue written opinions in moving departments on the
So
Superior
the
Court.
answer is no?
In the 5 years I've been on the Superior Court, I've been in moving departments. We don't issue written opinions in moving departments.
Okay. What is the standard of review in federal court for questions of fact?
For questions of fact by the trial court, it is clear error, sir.
Okay. What's the standard of review for questions of law?
In the trial court level, it's de novo.
Okay. What is what's the holding in Map v. Ohio?
Map v. Ohio, since I've been practicing as a district attorney for the last 12 years, as well as a Superior Court judge over the last 5 years, I know what the holding is. It escapes me as I currently sit here, but
okay.
As a Superior,
what's the Chevron doctrine? You'll see that a lot.
Yes, Chevron deference refers to an administrative agency that's interpreting its own rule. It created a two-part step test. The first step in that test is whether Congress was clear.
You know it. I got you. What's the political question doctrine?
I have not, as a Superior Court judge, and over the last 5 years, and as a Deputy District Attorney for 12 years, I have not practiced in a federal court, so if I am so fortunate enough to be confirmed, I will obviously apply the applicable law.
Okay, I want to talk about the United States Constitution. Is it a doctrine of plenary powers or enumerated powers?
Enumerated powers, sir.
Okay. I yield back 1 second, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy. Welcome to all of our nominees and your families. I ask the following two initial questions of all nominees who appear before any of my committees to ensure the fitness of nominees for the offices that you are being nominated for. So I will ask these two questions, and we'll start with, in responses with Judge Gray and go right down the line. Since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature?
No, Senator Hirono. No, Senator Hirono.
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
No, excuse me, no, Senator.
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
Have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement related to this kind of conduct?
No, Senator Hirono.
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
So I note that all of our judicial nominees this morning, except for Ms. Kobik, you are all sitting judges. We sit in this committee often. The nominees are asked questions about what your judicial philosophy is. And the questions usually are whether you're an originalist, a textualist, et cetera. I'll start with the sitting judges. How do you approach decision-making in your court? We'll just go down the line.
Senator Hirono, as I observed Judge Keith and Judge Sands through my clerkships, I approach each case with an open mind, with fidelity to the Constitution and any applicable Supreme Court or Sixth Circuit precedent, and I follow where the facts and the law lead me to reach a just and fair decision.
Judge Lynn.
Thank you for the question, Senator. I follow a very similar approach to Judge Gray. I diligently review the factual record and the applicable binding precedents, and then I listen with an open mind to the evidence and arguments, and I issue a ruling based on the law and the facts.
Senator Hirono, my answer would not be very different than my colleagues. I keep an open mind. I adhere to the rule of law and my oath as a judge to be impartial. I listen to the parties' arguments, consider the factual record, look at precedent, apply that precedent to the facts, and render a decision.
Go ahead.
Thank you for the question, Senator. In the 5 years that I've been a Superior Court judge, my approach to resolving cases or handling cases is first to follow the law. I keep an open mind. I'm prepared. I make sure I read all of the briefings and I read applicable binding precedent. I apply that precedent and apply the law to the facts in the case.
Ms. Kubrick, how would you approach cases before you?
Thank you, Senator. I think my approach would be similar, but I'd add a few things. I view the role as a judge to resolve the case in front of her and only the case in front of her. So I would be mindful of the constraints on judicial power and approach each case with an open mind and with humility. And I would likewise review the record very carefully, review the arguments that the parties have made in their submissions, carefully research and apply the relevant Supreme Court and First Circuit precedent, and strive to write decisions that are clear and comprehensible to all the parties.
I really appreciate the responses you gave, because as far as I'm concerned, what I would expect from a judge is an ability to be fair and objective and not have any kind of axe to grind or any kind of a philosophical bent that would make it hard for them for you to be objective, and to listen to the facts of the case and apply the relevant law, knowing full well that there's some, the law is not entirely clear sometimes as to the applicability of it, and so therefore I expect that we can look at your decisions and say that you have been fair and objective. So thank you very much. I do have a few questions for the nominee, who is Ms. Solomon. Hold on for a moment. The office for which you are nominated, you do provide some grants for groups that are fighting trafficking, I believe. So under the leadership, OJP has awarded funds to combat human trafficking and support victims. And ending trafficking and addressing human trafficking is a long-term problem and very complicated. And I just want to mention that we have a crisis in Hawaii in that 2/3 of the sex trafficking victims are identified as Native Hawaiians. And 1 out of every 3 child sex trafficking victims are Native Hawaiians. And this is a very disproportionate kind of an impact in all Native communities, including Native Hawaiians, American Indians, Alaska Natives, that the instances of sex trafficking and sexual abuse are much, much higher and prevalent in these communities. So I'd like to hear more about the work that your office does in preventing sex trafficking.
Thanks for the question. I know we're tight on time, so I'll just acknowledge that it is a major issue. It's a global issue, and we know that vulnerable populations in particular are part of the human trafficking issue. We take it very seriously at the Office of Justice Programs. We do have resources. $90 million, I believe, went to human trafficking groups to fight this issue this year, and I'd be happy to take the issue of what's going on in Hawaii back to the office if I'm so fortunate as to be confirmed.
And since I am presiding, I'm going to give myself just a little bit of leeway, because this is a huge problem. This is a huge challenge, and the Department of Justice also has another program in which there are grants provided to combat trafficking in the Native communities. So a concern I have is that the resources are scarce, and yet we have these programmatically different offices within the DOJ that addresses the similar kinds of problems. And it seems to me that maybe there's a way that we can combine forces or do something that makes sure that we use the scarce resources in a more effective way. Thank you. We now move on to Senator Blackburn.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and congratulations to each of you. And I am so pleased that Senator Hirano mentioned the human trafficking and the shortage of funds and the need to focus on that. It is something that we all share. Judge Reyes, let me come to you. I know that Senator Grassley asked you about the Sternquist decision, and not sure we gave a complete answer there. So what I'd like for you to do is, looking at your history and seeing that you have a record of releasing these dangerous criminals into communities, how are we going to be assured that you are going to follow sentencing laws?
Thank you, Senator Blackburn. As I said to Senator Grassley, in the 850 cases that I've handled dealing with bail, I follow the same procedure. listen to the arguments from the government, look at the evidence, consider the pretrial services report, which has a recommendation on whether to release or not, and I follow Congress's mandated standards in the Bail Reform Act.
You have had a tendency of releasing violent criminals, and we all hear a lot from our communities about criminals that are released and on the streets. Let me ask you this. A few years ago, you stated that, and I'm quoting you, the continued criticism and assault on the judiciary is troubling. And I agree with you on that statement. So I want to give you the opportunity to expand on that and ask you if you agree with me that the constant protesting outside of the Supreme Court justices' homes is not only unlawful, but is also deeply troubling.
Senator Blackburn, I don't remember making that statement, so I can't comment.
Do you stand by that this should be deeply troubling to us, that people are protesting outside of Supreme Court justices' homes? Okay.
I am keenly aware, Senator, of the dangers that judges face in our society.
Do you agree that the assassination attempt on Justice Kavanaugh is something that should be deeply troubling, and that this type of rhetoric is unacceptable against members of the judiciary?
I would agree, Senator Blackburn, that any assassination attempt made on an American citizen is deeply troubling.
But you're not sure where you stand on people protesting outside of the judge's home. Let me move on. Let's see, Ms. Kobik. Let me come to you. I heard your response on the Caetano versus Massachusetts case and your assertion that you would follow Supreme Court precedent when it comes to Second Amendment rights. So tell me what your understanding is of whether the Second Amendment applies only to militias.
Senator, the Supreme Court held in the Heller decision that the Second Amendment protects an individual right to keep and bear arms.
So you would stick with that?
Absolutely, Senator.
Okay. And let me ask you this. Why is it constitutionally permissible for the right to keep and bear arms, which the Supreme Court has called a fundamental right,
yes,
that right to bear arms, but that right is subject to the discretionary issuance of a license by a local official?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I know different jurisdictions have different statutes related to licensing. If a case were to come before me involving a Second Amendment challenge to a licensing statute, I would certainly apply the Supreme Court's precedent, including the methodology clarified by the court in the Bruin decision.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Solomon, you recently stated that equity plays a role in the Biden administration's budgetary considerations. And in my view, we should be dispersing funds to law enforcement, and your equity comment was made in connection with disbursement of funds. And I think we should be dispersing these funds to communities where there is a financial need, because communities all across this country are struggling with how to handle gangs and violent crime. And it is so critical that we support local law enforcement. In Tennessee, we have had some issues, and Senator Haggerty and I actually introduced the Restoring Law and Order Act to deal with this, to make certain that those funds get to the places where they are most needed. So would you agree with me that this administration should focus on ensuring that communities have the resources they need to fight violent crime, instead of looking at a political ideology, a woke ideology that says it's got to be done on equity?
Thank you for the question. I completely agree that too many communities are struggling with violent crime, and it is absolutely our mission to get those jurisdictions the resources they need. So many of our resources are going directly to law enforcement, including our JAG grants and others. We're also trying to help work on health and resiliency and wellness for law enforcement officers, on recruitment,
Should
retention.
it be focused on need?
Absolutely, yes. The equity provision is as we consider our fundable applications, that we also take into account ways to bolster communities and community organizations to be a complement to law enforcement to make our communities strong and safe.
Okay. Thank you.
Senator Hawley.
Thank you very much. Thanks to the witnesses for being here. Congratulations on your nominations. Ms. Kobach, if I could just start with you. Let me ask you a question about the First Amendment, if I could. Does the First Amendment apply to the medium of the internet, in your view?
My understanding is that it does, Senator.
Why would that be true, considering that the internet didn't exist in 1791?
Well, Senator, the Supreme Court has adopted a number of different tests for assessing the constitutionality of different provisions. The First Amendment protects speech, of course, and people speak on the internet. But I would adhere to the relevant test if any First Amendment case were to come before me.
Well, I ask you because the Supreme Court has said something much the same in the Second Amendment context. And in the Second Amendment context, you argued to the Supreme Court that because a particular firearm did not exist at the time of held arguments that you made were not to be countless at all. You didn't get a single vote. So tell me, help me understand, why did you make arguments that the Supreme Court said had previously been made and previously rejected by the same court?
Thank you, Senator. I just would like to clarify at the outset that I did not handle the Catano case when it was before the Supreme Judicial Court. The case was handled by the district attorney rather than the Attorney General's office at that stage. In the Supreme Court, the argument that I made...
Wait a minute, you didn't, the Catano case at the U.S. Supreme Court, you didn't handle it?
I did. Supreme Judicial Court.
I'm asking you about the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court judgment that rejected your arguments. So you've just confirmed, I think, that you made those arguments to the United States Supreme Court. Is that correct?
Respectfully, Senator, the argument in that brief was slightly different. The argument was that a stun gun is, we argued on behalf of the Commonwealth, not an analog to a founding era weapon.
Which the Supreme Court rejected unanimously.
The Supreme Court held that the Supreme Judicial Court had misstated the Heller decision in 3 respects. But again, I didn't handle the case in front of the Supreme Judicial Court.
So your argument is that your position wasn't rejected unanimously by the U.S. Supreme Court?
I certainly acknowledge, Senator, that the Supreme Court summarily reversed the Supreme Judicial Court's decision. And I would adhere to the Supreme Court's holding in Catano and reaffirmance of Heller's statements.
Here's what I'm trying to understand. The Supreme Court was very dismissive of your arguments. One of the reasons it was dismissive is it said they've considered these arguments before and rejected them. This is why they then rejected your arguments per curiam, unanimously. So I'm trying to understand why someone who has ethical obligations to the court, why you would make arguments that the court has previously rejected, knowing that they'd previously rejected them. And then here's the other thing that interests me. In this case, the person who had been arrested under this law that the Supreme Court then reversed on was the victim of domestic abuse. And I just want to read a few of the facts here. This is from Justice Thomas and Justice Alito's concurrence in that per curiam judgment. Here's what they say. After a bad altercation, that's from the trial record, with an abusive boyfriend that put her in the hospital, Jamie Catano found herself homeless and in fear of her life. So she obtained multiple restraining orders against her abuser, but they proved futile. So when a friend offered her a stun gun for self-defense, against her former boyfriend, she accepted the weapon. And it's a good thing she did. Because one night, after leaving work, Catano found her ex-boyfriend waiting for her outside. He started screaming that she was, this is from the trial record, not gonna effing work at this place anymore because she should be home with the kids they had had together. Catano's abuser towered over her by nearly a foot and outweighed her by close to 100 pounds. She stood her ground, displayed the stun gun, and announced, "I'm not going to take this anymore. I don't want to have to use the stun gun on you, but if you don't leave me alone, I'm going to have to." And the gambit worked. The ex-boyfriend got scared, and he left her alone. You think she shouldn't have had the right to self-defense?
Senator, thank you. Again, the district attorney made the decision to bring charges in the Catano case. The Attorney General's office and myself were not involved in that decision, but I certainly recognize
That you argued for it to be upheld before the United States Supreme Court.
Senator, the argument in that brief was that the Supreme Court should deny review of the case.
Right,
But I
which
take
deny the right of self-defense to this person. I'm asking you why.
Senator, my duty as Assistant Attorney General was to represent the Commonwealth in that case when it came to the Supreme Court, and I did so consistent with my ethical obligations.
Your duty is not to make frivolous arguments to the Supreme Court of the United States. And frankly, I question your judgment in what you did in this case, and I question your judgment in choosing to try and perpetuate what is manifestly an injustice to this victim of domestic abuse. I yield the rest of my time.
I almost feel compelled to say something about the bringing of frivolous lawsuits, i.e. all of the lawsuits based on election fraud, most of which were not upheld, but we won't go there. Before I adjourn today's hearing, I would like to make a quick logistical note. Questions for the record will be due to the nominees by 5 p.m. on Wednesday, December 7th, and the record will likewise remain open until that time to submit letters and similar materials. And with that, this hearing is adjourned. Thank you very much.